everybody. Welcome back to the Rote Reviews. Today, we are quite honored and thrilled to have Larry Duplechan in our hot seat to talk about his book, Blackbird, and the evolution into the film that was made from it. So, Larry, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and also how you got into writing and where the book came from?
Yeah. Wow. I got
That was a
into
loaded
writing.
question, right?
Yeah, boy. And it's not exactly a short answer, but I'll try.
Okay.
I came to writing from a relatively unusual place, which was from having been a performer. I was a singer. That's what I was going to do with my life. I knew that when I was 8 or 9 years old, that I
Okay.
was going to be a singer. And the plan was I was going to be a monster superstar singer, and then segue into film and television because they would write vehicles for me because I was not, I wasn't a type. So I would have to, build from there. And I had a plan, by golly. And I banged my head against the show business wall for about 7 years after college, and plateaued rather quickly. And I didn't like being poor, and my then boyfriend, now husband, didn't like the fact that I wasn't making much money. I always worked, but the kind of jobs that you can work when you're also singing all night in nightclubs, is minimal. And after 7 years of this, my husband finally said, I'm your biggest fan, and I think you are star material. And if you want to continue doing this, I wish you all the luck in the world, but not with me. I need you to be home. I need you to have dinner with me and, go to sleep with me at the same time and not be out until all hours of the morning singing. So there was that dream. And so I stopped, it was a choice. And a good man kind of trumps a maybe singing career.
There you go.
At least it did for me. So I was an English major at UCLA. I have a BA in English Lit, and I always knew I could write. And as part of my show business dream, I assumed that sooner or later I would write, my tell-all autobio, in volumes boxed like Proust.
Right.
And
I noticed the Roz Russell inference there.
And because I am an attention whore, I knew I had to express myself in some way, and I was pretty sure I could do it writing. What I really wanted to do was write pop cultural commentary and criticism, but I had no idea how I might get into that field. And I tried certain things, and that didn't happen. But I was pretty sure if I could write a novel, I could get a novel published. And I was too dumb to know otherwise. So I wrote a novel, my first novel, 8 Days a Week, because this was the late 70s, early 80s. And I was told by somebody who I thought knew that it would be easier to get a novel published than to get short stories published. So I did. I wrote a book, and not knowing that you couldn't get something published without an agent, I just mailed it out to people. And it did get published by Sasha Allison at Allison Publications. And that book is about my years of banging my head against the show business wall. And I knew that was a story I wanted to tell. And I knew that I also wanted to write about high school. And Blackbird, of course, is about high school. And as 8 Days a Week was in process, about to get published, I was busy writing Blackbird and writing it with Michael Denneny at St. Martin's Press in mind, because he had, in a very kind way, turned down my first novel. It was fun, but there's not much there. And he sent me to Sasha Allison, said Sasha will probably publish it. And I told Sasha right up front that my next novel I was going to be offered to St. Martin's Press because that was my dream. That was my dream publishing house, and then they did. So that was my short version of my writing journey. At least my first two novels were.
Excellent. So how did the evolution from the printed word make it to the silver screen? What was that journey about?
Well, probably about 1990, 91.
Mhm.
A kid named Patrick Ian Polk wrote to me saying, I just got out of film school and I'm going to be a filmmaker and I love your book, Blackbird, and I'm going to make a movie out of it. And I thought, oh, that's nice. And then that was it for a while. And maybe a year or two later, he sent me a script based on the book. And I hated it. And he'd updated it to from the 70s to the 90s, because that's when he was in high school, and he changed the name of the major character, and he made a lot of changes to it. And I just thought, well, this kid's not going to make a movie. He is in no position to make a movie. He was, I think, schlepping coffee at HBO or something at that point. So I didn't think that much about it. But Patrick popped up every 2 or 3 years. He'd swing into Los Angeles and he'd call me and he'd take me to lunch, and he'd say, I'm going to make the Blackbird movie. And then he made Punks. And then a couple of years later, he called and he took me to lunch. He said, I'm going to make the Blackbird movie. And then he did the Noah's Ark series. And I began calling him the filmmaker who cried wolf. And this is never going to happen. And in January of 2014, Patrick called me and said, I made the Blackbird movie. We should probably sign a contract.
What?
He actually made the movie on our verbal that, if you make a movie, I'll sell you the film rights. We hadn't talked about price. We hadn't talked about, back end. We hadn't talked about anything. He made the movie, called me and told me that he'd made the movie. So I had never seen a script. I had never seen an actor. I had never seen an audition. He went to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, which is his hometown, and made the movie.
That's one hell of a story right there.
So fortunately, I did want the film made. So yes, we did, we agreed on a price less than half of what I wanted for my film rights, because it was a low budget movie. And when I told him what I wanted for my film rights, he said, I don't have it. How about this? And I was like, well, that's not very much. But by that point, Blackbird came out in 1989. Okay. This was 2014. It's not like there'd been a 15-year bidding war for Blackbird, and this kid had made the movie. So I agreed, and I signed, and the following month, the movie premiered, and I saw it for the first time at the Pan-African Film Festival here in Los Angeles, in a huge.
So were you gripping the armrests?
Yeah, I was going to say, how was that for you?
Well, here's the thing.
Okay.
I was kind of prepared for what I got when in January of that year, a few weeks before the movie was premiered, Facebook friends started sharing with me the little squibs that were starting to pop up on the internet. And the first thing I noticed was the still, the production still that they were using to advertise it had Monique and Isaiah Washington front and center, and these two unknown kids, a black boy and a white boy, in the back. And I thought, oh shit, Patrick has just taken my book about a kid and made a movie about the kid's parents, which is kind of what he did. Because when you have an Oscar winner and a television star co-producing your movie, you give them something to do. So he padded the roles of the mother and the father and kind of made the movie about them. And so my hopes were not high going into the movie, and rightly so. It's my line about the Blackbird movie is that it's a nice little movie, and it is. I've seen it several times, and I enjoy it, but it's not a good movie of my book.
Of your book,
right?
You know, I took my husband and half a dozen or so friends to the premiere, and after about half an hour of the movie, my husband and I started making a little parlor game about looking for things that are actually in the book. In the movie, where I would just kind of nudge him and go, "That's in the book."
Oh, to have been a fly on that wall.
Right.
It was an amazing night on a number of levels. They had a little red carpet thing, and I walked the red carpet for the first time. And they did the over here, Larry, over there, Larry thing, and I loved it. It was great. But before that, I'd had to pull rank on the kid at the ticket table because they couldn't find my +1 ticket for my husband.
Ooh.
And I literally had to lean into this kid's face and say, "I wrote the book. Find me a ticket."
Good on you.
Good for you, but wow.
And they did. But it was big. The Black literati were out, and one of my favorite moments in it was, by the time. Well, first of all, the screening started about 90 minutes late.
Okay.
Black people of the previous generation have something that's called CP time.
Color people time. Mm-hmm.
And this was definitely run on CP time. And by the time the principals entered the theater, there wasn't an empty seat in the place. And there was no place for Monique, et cetera, to sit. So Patrick's little minions were going around asking people to give up their seats. And once again, I had to go, "I wrote the book. These are my friends. We're not leaving." But shortly before the film started, CCH Pounder, the actress, entered the theater, and Jennifer Lewis stood up from her seat and said, "Somebody get up and give CH Pounder their chair."
Brilliant.
And you can just imagine how loud it was. It was Jennifer Lewis, so they heard her, in Sacramento,
in New York,
Right.
But like I said, I think it's a good little movie, and it's better than no movie based on my book, but only slightly. I never sit and think, "Oh, gee, I wish he hadn't made
Inspired by the situations from the book.
Yeah, I think the actual words above my name are adapted from, or something like that. But what Patrick did is, and in a way, it's a tribute to just how close to the book he felt, is that he really kind of did a mashup of my story and his story.
Gotcha.
He moved it to his hometown.
Right.
He made most of the white characters Black. He changed the name of my protagonist, which I'm happy about, because Johnny Ray Russo exists in real time for me. Johnny Ray Russo's turning 64 on Christmas Day. So he wasn't a teenager in 2014. So I'm glad, for that reason, I'm glad he changed the name to Randy, because that's a different entity than my protagonist. There was, in one of the later scenes of the film, there's one of Randy's dreams And it talks about Randy becoming a filmmaker, which is clearly Patrick,
Mhm.
you know, telling his own story within my story. But again, I never saw a script. I never saw that come in. I
Wow.
didn't know he was going to do a mashup of my story and the Patrickian folk story, but that's what we got.
Wow. There really was a story there.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh, there's more. Yeah,
Girl dish.
yeah, yeah. Well, you know, they wouldn't pay me after all that falderall. After it had premiered, mind you,
Right.
Right.
and they hadn't paid me my money. And Patrick referred me to one of the producers. Carol Shine is her name. And she actually, and this is on texts and emails. Well, you know, the film costs more than we thought, and we've run out of money and we can't pay you.
Gotcha.
And
Gotcha.
I
Oh,
said,
wow.
no, that's not how this works. And so the first thing I did was I took to social media and I went on Facebook and said, the Blackbird people won't pay me my money. Tell everybody you know. And people started doing that. And
Ah,
so she contacted me and said, you've got to stop doing that. You'll hurt the film. And I said, I care. What are you going to do? Not pay me?
Right.
right.
So this went on for weeks into months. And total schmuck that I am, it never occurred to me. I'm a legal secretary. That's how I make my living. And I was up to my hips in attorneys. And I simply turned to one of the attorneys I worked for and said, and told him what was going on. And he said, here. And he handed me a paragraph of language and said, put this in an email, send it to the producer. And it was a cease and desist. And he said, you're in breach of contract. And until you pay Larry Duplechan what you owe him, you don't have a film. You can't screen it. You can't show it. You can't advertise it. They paid me that day.
Wow.
Yeah.
There you
Yeah.
go. Well,
There's no business like show business.
right.
Wow.
Right. Yep. That is an amazing story. Now I want to just insert here a little sidebar story that Larry posted just recently, Vance, that will totally tickle you.
Oh, really?
This man right here had an actual encounter with the actress who played Gloria.
Oh, my Joanna Barnes story?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anti-Mame is one of mine and Vance's all-time favorite films. We quote
Well,
it.
yeah, I should hope so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Come on.
So
of course.
tell Vance your story because I wanted to see his reaction.
This had to have been 1980, 81. I was still working at UCLA. I was working in the graduate library at UCLA in the library card window. And I issued Joanna Barnes's UCLA library card. And I recognized her, and then I recognized her name.
Mhm.
And I swear this. I did this. I can't tell you. And she went, I can't tell you. We did dueling Gloria Upson at the UCLA Research Library.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, she was really top drawer. She was a darling. She was really sweet. I'll never forget that because some people could have been really snotty about it. And
Yeah.
didn't she Gloria Upson right back at me?
That's fantastic. I love it.
That is one of the most beautiful stories I have ever heard. I love that so much.
In the words of Lucy Ricardo, it has had, Ethel Mertz, it's had more performances than South Pacific. I tell that story a lot, but it's a great story, especially if you love it.
No, it is. It's a fabulous story.
That is fantastic.
Well, Larry, I mean, I'm so thrilled that you came on to tell us about your evolution of the book. Now, where's the best place for people to follow what you're doing? And where can they pick up the book? And what have you got planned currently? Are you working on anything?
Wow, you do ask these multi-part questions, don't you?
At least three in every statement.
Yeah, right.
At least three.
My last novel was published in 2008. And that was it for me. I don't think there are any more novels coming from me. I'm actually considering maybe possibly doing a memoir of some sort, but I haven't written word one of that. Um, I'm not currently a writer. I have written. Um, Bernice Johnson Reagan of Sweet Honey in the Rock once said, "I am what I'm doing today."
Oh, very good.
So, I'm a knitter, basically.
Who does wonderful creation,
I
people,
have,
I'm telling you.
I've told my stories, and there's a generation or maybe two following me who are telling their stories, and I'm perfectly happy with helping
Cheering
some
you
of
on.
them. I have mentored a couple of younger Black gay writers and
Excellent.
edited the heck out of them because they spell badly, and encouraging them.
The texting culture.
Good Lord, I encourage them, and I've blurbed a couple of younger writers' books, and that's about it for me.
Okay, fair
So
enough.
all of my books, only two of them are actually in print, but all of them are very much available secondhand on Amazon for postage. And so I encourage people, to buy the oeuvre. I've never made a lot of money as a writer, so the 75 cents I'm going to make if you buy Blackbird new is just not going to make a big difference in my life. But I do.
But it might make a big difference in theirs.
I do like the fact, yeah, but that's but it's the reading of the book that counts for me. So,
Right.
Find them, read them. I love talking about them. So, like when people message me and say, I hope you don't mind asking you a question about your book, I'm like, ask. So
Where should they message you?
I'm on Facebook. I'm the only Larry Duplechan on Facebook.
Nice.
I'm very easy to find.
Okay.
for better and for worse.
Thank you so much, Larry, for coming here.
Thank you.
Telling us your
There's
story.
nothing I like better than talking about myself. So thank you.
There you go. Well, we'll have you back anytime you want to. We'll just wrap. We'll have a kiki.
Love it.
All right. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
Okay. Bye-bye. Hey everybody, so welcome back for the review part of Blackbird. First, again, thank you, Larry, for coming in and telling us that story.
Much.
Oh my God, that story was fabulous.
Yes.
Not what I expected at all, and it was great, even so. So the movie Blackbird, it is a story about sexual awakening and of a young Black youth. But as Larry indicated, his story was actually set in the 70s and was reminiscent of his own story, whereas Patrick Ian Polk, because of the way he looked like he got his funding, he made it more about the name actors that were in the story than the actual book that Larry wrote. So given that context, which we did not have before we did this review,
right.
How do you feel about it, Vance?
It was an awakening into a world I don't know, first and foremost. And, you often hear the horror stories about living in a fundamentalist family, and in this case, a Baptist family that is extremely religious. But it's something quite different to see it when it's not your world. That said, I loved it. I loved the twist at the end because I was not ready for that. And now I need to know if that twist is in the book or the filmmaker's twist, because it makes you want to go back and watch the movie a second time to put the pieces together the right way. And I love it when a filmmaker can catch me off guard like that. So whoever wrote that piece, kudos.
And it's funny, I actually did it backwards. I saw the movie first before the book.
Okay.
So it was very, very eye-opening to see the differences that played out. I think what's interesting about it also, and I love that Larry kind of clarified it, that Noah's Ark came before this film came, because there are definite, Patrick Ian Polk definitely has a certain style of storytelling.
Yeah.
And, I was a fan of Noah's Ark. I watched the whole series. I was a little, it wasn't until we had the conversation with Larry today that the final pieces clicked into place, because the whole time I was watching the movie, I'm like, well, but isn't this about him?
Right.
And I saw that what they were doing with the adult, and I'll juxtapose it with another film that we will eventually review on this show called Saturday's Church. And it deals a lot with the same issues. But the reason why I'm bringing it up as a comparison is because in that film, when we get to it, you will see how the story of the youth plays front and center, and it doesn't take away from what the parents go through. It's played, I think, in a way that's very balanced, but you keep the youth story that it's focused on, the protagonist,
Mm-hmm.
the hero of the story, as it were. That person remains front and center.
Right.
But it doesn't detract from. And I think my critique of the film was that I always felt like you never got enough of, Randy's character in this movie. It always seemed like there was something quite not there. I had a feeling of like, I was cheated out of part of the story. There was a part that happened that was off screen that I didn't know, I wasn't privy to. I always had that kind of weird disconnect with it. Not that I didn't enjoy the movie, I did, but it just, that's one of the things that became, that always kind of stuck in my craw. And it wasn't until we had that conversation with Larry today that piece finally slipped in, and I went, oh, okay. That's why I've had this feeling every time I've watched it. It now makes so much more sense. And in a way, I kind of give the film a fairer shake, knowing that now. If I had known that before, I probably would not have had this, well, it was good, but, kind of thing to it. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and so I approached it from only having seen the film. I've not yet had the chance to read the book, but now I want to, like I said. Mm-hmm. On its own, as a standalone, it is a good little film, like you said. And the main character's story arc is woven into his parents' story arc, in that there's a historic tie to his sexual awakening that shocks him to the core.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of like that cyclical storytelling, that generational cycle
of
storytelling,
mm-hmm.
a lot, actually. So though I really never want an artist to be disrespected in terms of their work, on its own, I did like the movie's story.
Mm-hmm. And that's fair. Even Larry says he's watched it many, many times.
Right.
The thing I find interesting is that you have Isaiah Washington in this movie, and he's already brought back his whole knockdown drag out with Katherine Heigl from not Grey's Anatomy. What was the name of the show? Can't think of it now. It's not coming to me. Where he disparaged T.R. Knight and actually outed him.
You're talking about Hollywood Gossip I didn't hear.
Oh, yeah. There's this is why Isaiah Washington has pretty much disappeared from television for the most part, because while he was filming that, T.R. Knight who was gay and out. Oh, he wasn't out at the time. That's the crux of the whole thing. Right. And Isaiah said something during the filming of one of the episodes and used the F word, and quite disparagingly, and it got out, and then it ended up outing T.R. Knight before he had a chance to deal with it. So, I find it an odd thing that Isaiah's in this movie. I struggle with that because I know what his personal position is on it, and it had gone away. People weren't talking about it, and all of a sudden this week, you can go look this up. It's out there now. He drug it back up in Twitter again. For what reason, nobody knows. He just dredged up, this is why I'm not working. And he blew it up again. And people are like, dude, we've moved on. And so, that now colors how I see this film. Not saying I judge his performance ending differently, but it's just, it sticks in my craw now because I know what happened during, the actor's other projects, and the fact that he was part and parcel of outing someone who was not ready,
That's very disheartening.
Yeah. So that colors the movie for me. I always have to unplug that when I watch it again, and I have watched it many times, just like Larry. And it's one of the reasons why I became Facebook friends with Larry. One, because he was an author and an author of color, and I'm all about that. And when I saw that I'm like, oh my God, the movie, he wrote the book. I mean, I was really excited because I had seen the movie many times up to that point. And it's just, it breaks my heart in many respects because, it seems like Larry missed out on the opportunity to be a part and parcel of that whole project. And it almost makes me want to start a GoFundMe and say, let's get this movie made right. Because in many respects, like he says, that film has yet to be made,
Yep.
Okay. Well, given all of that, what do you give it? So for me, overall, I give it a 4. You could definitely tell this was an indie film, so that's where I'm going with that. Screenwriting, knowing what we know now.
I know, that's what makes it so hard.
This is what makes it hard. Knowing what we know now from having talked to Larry, who wrote the book that it's from, I have to give the screenwriting a 3 because it is clear that a lot of the points that Larry made in his own novel would have probably served the movie better than making some of the shortcuts. And that may have been for budgetary reasons, I'm not sure. But still, I think there could have been some more work there to get it done right. Sound, lighting, score, 4. It was okay. The art direction, I'd say this was a solid 4.5. I think they captured the South. They captured that whole, period really well. Although I am really kind of not happy now knowing what Larry said about the time placement. I really wish they had placed it in the time that he had written it. I know that would have probably taken a bigger budget, but hell, there's fucking Goodwill out there. I'm sure you can find 70s style clothing and shit, So anyways, so there's that. Casting, I did like the cast. I did think it was cast well, so I was fine with that. I'll give that a 4.5. The direction, I'm mixed on this only because I like Patrick Ian Polk's other things, and I do think he is a forward-thinking queer director and producer. I watched Noah's Ark. It's one of his biggest projects he's done. But the problem I have with this is now knowing what we know, it's tempering what I would give Patrick in this case. So I'm going to give it a 3.5 because of some of the creative choices that were made. I think there could have been some mining of more ideas or better ways to have done something that maybe was in the book and should have been included in the movie rather than just trying to cut corners and just get it done. So there's that. Queer themes, I definitely want to give this a 4.5 only because it's really important we have more queer people of color representation and hearing of their stories. So I'm only docking at a half again because of some of the points that Larry brought up in his novel that probably should have made it into the film. So that's why I'm not giving it a 5. I'm going to pull it back to a 4.5. So overall, a 4.
All right. My overall production, also a 4. Script, screenplay, I would have said 4 before we talked to Larry. Because on its own, if you don't know that history, it's actually quite good. It could have been better. Sound, lighting, score, yeah, it didn't get in the way. It didn't enhance. 3.5. Art direction, costuming, it was fine. 4. Casting, 5. Good cast. They took the project and ran with it. Directing, again, prior to talking to Larry, I would have said 4, because on its own, it stands on its own.
Yeah, it stands.
And then you hear the history, and you're like, oh, so mine's a
So much what could have been.
shame on you 4. Queer themes presented, I agree with you completely. We need more stories about people of color. I'm going to give that one a 5, actually, because we need them. So for me, that brought it up to a 4 when you average them.
Okay. Good on Patrick Ian Polk and his retelling, or the events inspired by.
Right. There you go.
There you go. From Larry Duplechan. And again, we are so grateful to him coming on and telling his story.
Thank you, Larry.
Wonderful, wonderful story. Not what I expected by a long shot.
No, not even close.
I was like blown away with what he had to say about it. But anyways, follow Larry Duplechan. If you see him on Facebook, his knitting is a joy to watch. It is my ray of sunshine in this darkened time. So definitely thumbs up for Larry. All right. And we'll be back next week. And I don't have up what it is. Do you know what it is?
I don't off the top of my head.
Mambo Italiano.
Oh, fun.
Yes. So we get to do the My Big Fat Greek Wedding, but from an Italian standpoint.
My big fat gay Italian wedding.
Yeah, no. This one is a hoot. I mean, for me, it's a hoot, but we'll see what you think when you watch it. So
this will be my first watch.
Yes, I love those. No, I do. I like to see what you think of. I mean, half the time when I watch these movies with my friends, I sit down and I'm that annoying person who goes and watches them watching the movie.
Don't look at me. Don't look at me.
So it's terrible. So in this way, you get to do it all on your lonesome, but I get to hear what you thought about it. So I love those kinds of things. So, okay.
Awesome.
All right. So we'll see you guys next week. Remember to wash your hands, socially distance, wear your mask, be empathetic to people and their problems. Even if they voted for the other side, we need to show empathy. We need to be the world we want to see. So,
yes,
definitely, be that kind person. All right. And
like,
we'll
subscribe, comment.
Subscribe, like, subscribe, comment. Yep. So, we'll see you guys next week. All right. Bye.
Closing time. The bums rush in melody, dear.